Why is everything slop now? That's the question of the day, man. And we're gonna figure out why everything is slop right now. Let's get into this vid, man. Why is everything slop now? Let's cook.
Do you guys remember the baggy jeans trend in the early 2000s? Every young hip celebrity was wearing them. Well, before baggy jeans became early 2000s, every young hip celebrity was wearing them.
Popularized by black people. We're gonna start that there. You know what I'm saying?
Well, before baggy jeans became a fashion symbol, they were mostly worn for utility. Skaters used them for mobility and comfort and to protect themselves from scratches. Eventually, they became a signal of the skater identity, and seeing that skating was such a cool thing back then, it started to proliferate from skating culture to pop culture. This is the usual cycle of trends in consumerist culture. A niche community creates a way to externally signal their identity. Other people start copying it because the community itself is cool. Then the style escapes the community, becoming a fashion trend of its own. But what happens when those communities...
And that junk can be so freaking bogus, bro. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, you know, your culture, in a sense, is like, it becomes like a fashion statement, bro. And it almost also becomes something that, you know, you can't even recognize.
Communities begin to disappear when fewer people belong to places where culture can emerge. That's when taste becomes a commodity. The word taste is being thrown around a lot on the internet lately. Venture capitalists say they're investing in founders with taste. Designers argue that AI has intelligence but not taste. Fashion influencers talk about developing taste instead of following trends. But why now? Taste has been something that people have been acquiring for thousands of years, so why does it suddenly feel like one of the most valuable qualities a person can have? To understand that, we first have to understand how culture is created. In his 1973 paper, Cultural Reproduction and Social Reproduction, Pierre Bourdieu introduced the idea of cultural capital. Cultural capital refers to the knowledge, behavior, skills, and tastes that allow someone to gain status, succeed, and belong within a particular social group. Unlike economic capital, which is how much money you have, or social capital, which is who you know, cultural capital is about what you know, what you value, and the habits you acquire from participating in a culture. I'll give you a clear example to illustrate the point. Let's say you're at the skate park. You know which skaters are respected, which brands are considered poser brands, what music people listen to, how to talk, and the unspoken etiquette of taking turns at obstacles. You do some tricks, talk to a few of the other skaters using skate lingo, and are clearly in the know of skating. Because of that shared knowledge, the other skaters are much more likely to see you as one of them and accept you as a mutual. That is cultural capital. Of course, not all cultural capital is created equal. Knowing how to spot and name a good red wine based on the year and scent wouldn't exactly be useful if you were trying to infiltrate skating culture. Each field rewards its own forms of
It'd be a lame, bro. What the freak are you talking about?
Capital and has its own rules and hierarchy. Additionally, within cultural capital itself, there are three distinct forms of cultural capital that Bourdieu later coined in his 1986 essay, The Forms of Capital. These three forms of cultural capital explain why culture used to generate trends organically and why that's becoming increasingly difficult today. The first of these forms is called embodied cultural capital. These are the things that become a part of you through experience. Examples of embodied capital include your vocabulary, music taste, sense of humor, and ability to discuss philosophy. Bourdieu argued that these cannot be bought and require years of socialization and participation, but as you're going to see later in the video, this is not always the case anymore. The next type of cultural capital is objectified cultural capital. These are the physical cultural goods, the books, the clothing, the vintage furniture, that allow you to gain status and belong. Lastly is institutionalized cultural capital. These are the credentials you hold that are...
Sorry I'm not talking much right now, you know, soaking in the information. I'm low-key learning, bro. I don't have much opinion or anything to say right now because we're learning.
Given by a certain institution that recognizes your competence. Good examples of this are a master's degree, a medical license, a Pulitzer Prize, or trade certifications. So here's what I think. I think the reason culture has stagnated and become one big recycled mess, which inevitably makes it less cool, is because you no longer have to participate in culture in order to gain status and belonging within a certain niche community, and the weight of objectified cultural capital has disproportionately increased as a signaler of status and success over embodied and institutionalized cultural capital.
Facts, bro. You can just LARP now. I guess is what they say. You know what I'm saying? You can LARP, live action role play, bro. You can just role play being a part of the group, you know?
Let me put that more simply. We've become incredibly good at consuming the symbols of culture without participating in the cultures that produce them. Let's rewind the clock a few decades to the 1980s, before social media. What was considered cool back then? Colorful windbreakers, Sony Walkmans, saying radical or bodacious, and being able to do the Running Man. Sure, you could copy some of those things from television or movies, pop culture has always spread that way, but if you actually wanted to belong with the cool kids, you had to spend time with them. You had to know the music they listened to, the slang they used, where they hung out after school, and what they found funny. You had to participate in the culture before you could convincingly signal that you belonged to it. And this was even more true for niche cultures. If you wanted to be a part of, say, the intellectual elite culture, there was no other way to gain the knowledge, language, and mannerisms of intellectualism than to study in college and read a lot of classical literature. There were barely any representations of that culture in pop culture, so there was no other way around it. But today, the objects within a culture no longer point to the experience, and you can gain that experience through consumption instead of active participation. Due to the democratization of information,
you can just buy, with music nerds or whatever, bro. You can just buy a ton of CDs or vinyls and be like a music nerd because you look like a music nerd, because you bought the things that a musical nerd has, but you don't really have the actual qualities, the actual credentials or whatever to be a actual, musical nerd. You can see this definitely.
On the internet, algorithms have made every niche culture instantly accessible. In order to have the traits necessary to possess embodied cultural capital, all you need to do is consume enough of the right influencers' content and replicate their speaking and spending habits to be perceived as someone who belongs to that community. A good example of this is the disgustingly educated trend on social media right now. This is when a creator presents a set of books that will make you disgustingly educated or well-read. In the past, one would only know about these books if they actually had the credentials to comprehend the books and access them through means of education.
Excuse me, guys. What the freak? My bad.
But today, you can simply act disgustingly educated by buying the books off of Amazon and having AI summarize them for you. Now, there's certainly a case to be made about—
You gotta actually get that vocab, bro. Actually get the details, what's your favorite page, bro? You got a favorite page, you didn't learn any new words, you didn't expand your thought process and ideas through the process of working through all these pages individually, word by word. You know what I'm saying? All those things add up, bro. Those things actually mean something, bro.
Why democratizing information and allowing people access to esoteric knowledge is a good thing.
It's taking shortcuts, taking shortcuts, horrible, always horrible. You don't want to take shortcuts, shortcuts are bad for you, bro. Terrible for you. They are cancer. Root out all shortcuts out of your life and your life will be better. I promise. You're gonna have to put in some effort, bro. Life is meant to be laborious, but it's worth it in the end, always.
In theory, it should help marginalized people have an easier time educating themselves and becoming masterful in a given topic, serving as a way to accrue the cultural capital needed for upward mobility. But it just doesn't feel like that's how a lot of people are actually adopting these cultural capitals. This creates what I would call meta-LARP culture. This is where you can essentially LARP having a lot of cultural capital. When anyone can pull a famous line from a Nietzsche book and use AI to ask what the quote means, then present that information as their own, they can instantly adopt the characteristics of someone who possesses embodied cultural capital. In other words, the internet dramatically lowers the cost of appearing culturally fluent, and the rewards for appearance over experience are
You know what I feel like, man? I feel like most of this comes from like people desiring community, bro. Like a lot of people, it seems like they don't have like community, actual community. And you find community online. So therefore, like with like the skating community in like the 80s, you had to be an actual skater or be around skaters for you to, to embody, you know, skater aesthetic, skater vernacular, or skater lingo. You had to actually partake in it. When you lack community IRL these days, you go online and then you end up you end up being like a pseudo skater. You end up being like a pseudo skater, a pseudo intellectual, when you're trying to like embody this thing that you don't really participate in IRL, only online. Um and I feel like all of this stems from like the modern day lacking of community with people, especially younger people these days.
much higher now. And I think this is the true explanation of why culture has felt like it's stagnated over the past decade or so. Think about what happens when every interesting niche can be discovered by millions of people overnight. When a certain philosophy or fashion trend or dance no longer has years to mature inside a community in real life before the rest of the world finds it, an algorithm will extract it, then an influencer will package it, then a brand will catch on and find a way to commercialize it, and within weeks, it's everywhere. That
Facts, bro. You gotta turn off that phone, man. You turn off that phone. You can easily get back to this, I feel like, bro. You just gotta turn off that phone. You turn off that phone, get in the real world. I feel like you can make like your own kind of culture, bro. You can end up making your own kind of job, bro. Um, it's all just a matter of turning off that phone, bro. You gotta get off that phone, gotta get off these algorithms.
That is a huge problem because once everyone is consuming the symbols of culture, those symbols stop distinguishing the people who actually created it. The signals, like certain film cameras in photography culture or a huge bookshelf of classics in reading culture, become so detached from the experience that initially gave it its significance that it can no longer reliably signal any sort of meaning. And when those signals lose their meaning, communities lose one of the biggest incentives to create new ones. Instead of spending years developing something from the inside out, participating in an activity related to that niche community, and discovering or creating something new and fresh and influential that eventually catches on, every new idea is immediately flattened into content and sold to the masses. That's why so much of modern culture feels derivative. The life cycle of culture has accelerated so dramatically that authenticity barely has time to develop before it's turned into an aesthetic.
That's a
But
fact.
what about taste, right? We barely discussed it. Where does that fit into all of this?
Right.
Well, taste has become so valuable because it's one of the few remaining ways we try to distinguish genuine cultural understanding from performative cultural capital. Think about it. The old signals of cultural capital have become unreliable. Information is more ubiquitous and less verifiable. Niche trends are quickly shared and reproduced at scale by influencers on social media. In fact, this phenomenon has become so common that it recently got a name: taste slop. Originally coined by founder of the strategy firm Nemesis.
There go the word slop. There goes the word slop. Let's find new words for slop, guys. I'm sick of, the word LARP. I'm sick of the word slop, Come on, guys. Let's find new adjectives to describe people and things, we don't like. Let's get more specific, you feel me? Definitely.
Global
That's my thought on that.
Emily Siegel, taste slop is slop made out of things considered tasteful. She says it comes in two flavors, either AI/algorithmically generated content that deploys recognizable taste markers, a brand mood board featuring a designer suitcase, a skinny neck kettle, a Dita Rams book, or tasteful things deployed in service of slop, like a curated influencer dinner for a tech company. The key is that the visible signs of taste have been extracted from their original social context and redeployed generically. Sounds a lot like the idea of cultural capital gaining the ability to be aestheticized and performed, doesn't it? If Bourdieu was writing today, he'd probably describe taste slop as objectified cultural capital that has become detached from embodied cultural capital. In this new era of taste slop, I think what companies mean when they say they are hiring people with taste is that they're looking for things that are hard or impossible to fake or replicate in the age of influencers and AI. And I think this is an extremely important skill to understand if you want to gain status and success in the future. So what actually is taste? According to Emily Siegel, taste has 3 components: discernment, pattern recognition, and idiosyncrasy. I think this is a useful framework because every one of those qualities depends on something that algorithms are bad at producing. Discernment is your ability to judge why one thing is cooler or more useful or better than another. It can't really be developed by scrolling social media, but rather through sustained engagement with a craft, community, or body of work until you can articulate why one thing succeeds where another falls short. Pattern recognition comes from knowing the history of a field well enough to recognize when something is genuinely building on it rather than simply repeating it, and then some intuitive feeling that lets you be early to the idea or experience.
Right.
But idiosyncrasy is perhaps the most important and human component of them all. This is the part of your unique lived experience that cannot be imitated.
Bam! That right there, bro. Like, genuine taste is built off your own personal opinion, your own personal thought. Your favorite book cannot be something you have not actually read. And if your favorite book is something that you have not actually read and it's something that you pick just to have taste, it comes off, bro. You can definitely tell, especially when you're like interrogated on it. Like, okay, so what did you like about the book? Or what was your favorite, line in the book with your favorite metaphor? What was your favorite, whatever detail in the book, That comes off if you're not able to answer it. You can tell that you're just like faking, the love of the game, bro. Like, and that's something that's very corny, bro. It's very corny to be that kind of person that fakes liking something just to like be in with like the actual people who enjoy it. And it's a spit in the face to the people who actually enjoy it, because they actually put time and effort into actually enjoying this piece of media or this hobby of theirs. Definitely, bro. Like, you can't be just out here you know just liking something when you don't even like relate to it, bro. Nothing in your life points you to, enjoying this work of art or, this piece of media or this hobby. And I believe that, that's like a thing that matters. Like, or like a thing it's like a real thing. The things you like and the things that you're drawn to those things due to like personal experiences, bro. If you can't relate to something at all, you're not gonna feel anything towards it. Like, you'll just feel like a huge urge of like neutrality. Same thing with like hating things. You hate things due to your own personal life experience. You're not gonna be able to hate something unless you can find some kind of like relation to it and understanding to it. Definitely, bro. This is like it's like a big thing.
Combination of everything you've consumed, communicated, created, experienced, your personality, and what you've been influenced by, transmuted in a way that nobody else could. There are very few people in the world who can fuse all of these components at once and use them at just the right time.
You got a genuine connection to like the things you like, and that's what breeds your own personal taste.
For a culture to catch on and eventually see them as extremely valuable and as a high level of status. And I think that's why being someone tasteful, having taste, is such a hot topic right now. But ironically, and a lot of people don't seem to understand this on the internet right now when they talk about it, you can't develop taste by learning taste from someone else. You cannot watch a video about how to be more authentic and expect to be anything other than a copy of everyone else who watched that video. You will never find taste from a piece of content. Inevitably, the
Facts.
more that we talk about taste and authenticity online, the more people that will imitate it and LARP as being a tastemaker, or as a more concrete example, being chronically offline while posting about it online. But as more and more people offload their thoughts and ideas to AI and consume and buy products that emulate taste, that will only make the people who are actually participating in culture stand out even more. Just like the skaters who unknowingly created the baggy jeans trend, the next wave of culture will come from people too busy living interesting lives to care. Thank you very much for watching, and I just published my debut novel, Echoes Across Infinity, which is a culmination of all my tastes and what I enjoy teaching and learning about. This is
Go check out my dog book, man. Trust. But yeah, bro. Go outside, go live some life, and go experience art for your own perspective, man. You'll develop some taste. Promise. That's the end of this here video, bro. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Like, comment, do all the things. I'll see y'all in the next vid, bro. Peace out.